Those other questions surround this regulatory debate that's come up, legal questions, and we have the former SEC Chairman Harvey Pitt with us to talk about that. Good to have you on, Harvey. Just as a point-blank question right away, from what you know and what you saw yesterday, did Elon Musk break any laws or rules with the announcement on Twitter?
I don't think anyone can say he broke a law at this point. There's too much information we don't know. What I would say is that he took highly unusual and unprecedented steps to announce this transaction, and it raises a host of regulatory and fraud issues that I suspect will be looked at carefully.
All right, so if you were at the SEC, what specifically would you be looking at today? One of the things that people have brought up is the idea that he used the term funding secured in his first tweet.
Well, that tweet and the whole use of a tweet to announce this kind of transaction is very unusual, but it's the message, not the medium, that matters the most. And here he has said that he has financing secured and enough to offer $420 a share. So those facts had better be right, or else he might have been guilty of committing a fraud.
Right. And he obviously has, as our previous discussion got into a little bit, some people who are not big fans of his and certainly haven't been big fans of the stock have been betting against it a lot. So I would assume they would be looking for reasons to file a lawsuit. So the statement has to be true when it's made, right? Sounds like a silly question, but he needs to have had that funding as of yesterday. And do we need to have seen documentation, or do we need in the future to see documentation that he had the funding secured, $420 a share as of yesterday when he made that statement?
I guess I would say the word funding secured means he had it locked up and in place and legally enforceable. And that is a fact question. If he has it, then he didn't commit a fraud on that score, but he has to have had it when he said it.
And be able to prove that he had it, right? So
yes.
In some way. So, okay, so those are some of the questions that'll be asked. Now, you mentioned the medium in which he chose to make this announcement on Twitter, and some people said, that's strange. Now, I've heard a couple of different things on this, but and you correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, you're allowed to do that, make an announcement on social media, provided you tell your shareholders in a public company that you will. And Tesla's done that. They've said that he might make announcements. But my question is, shouldn't the company have made a similar announcement at the same time, simultaneous to Mr. Musk? It seemed like they waited to put out a statement for some time. In other words, the tweet came first. Is that a problem?
It is in the following respects. First of all, he made his announcement during the trading day. That's highly unprecedented. Announcements of this kind move markets, as we saw, and they are made either before the opening of the market or after the close. He did not do that. Second, he personally cannot secure a going private transaction. It requires the approval of independent directors on his board and then shareholder approval. So for the CEO to be announcing this and announcing his price is also very unusual.
Unusual? It sounds like but illegal or breaking some sort of a rule?
It's hard to say from this point that it's illegal. One has to have more facts, but it's highly problematic.
Okay, what do you need to know? What else do you need to know about the timing and the announcement? What's missing?
One of the things is, was there a reason for doing this? He has been complaining about shorts in the past, but he hasn't done anything. But he put the announcement out, and suddenly the stock bumped up 11%. Was that his intent? Did he make that announcement to move the stock, or did he make it simply to alert people that this was coming? Those are very important questions. One would want to look at all of his communications and what he had said in the weeks leading up to his tweets to make sure that what he said was actually correct.
Wow. All right. So there's a lot of issues there. We're going to talk a little bit more about Elon Musk later on in the show. Harvey, while you're here, I want to get you on this other breaking story of the day. Congressman Chris Collins is a Republican from New York, big supporter of the president, arrested and facing securities fraud charges today. He and his son accused of engaging in insider trading in the stock of a biotech company that's based in Australia. He's on the board of directors of this company. Southern District of New York, I believe, is prosecuting this case. Prosecutors are about to hold a news conference at this hour with some more details. But Harvey, this brings up a number of interesting issues in terms of members of Congress and their involvement with private companies. So Congressman Collins is on the board of directors of this company, gets an email from the CEO while he's at a congressional picnic at the White House, of all places, and then is alleged to have called his son, told him about a trial, a drug trial that had failed. The son then sells stock, allegedly, I believe the next day, and tips off some other people. So that would be textbook insider trading if all those things are true and can be proven, right? But it also brings up some issues, at least to me, about Congressman Collins and other members of Congress and how involved they are with companies, conflicts of interest.
Well, there are conflicts of interest, but members of Congress can make investments, but there are special laws that prevent congressmen from using their congressional positions to enhance their trading activities. This, as you said, is classic, an alleged classic insider trading problem.
Right. So that's where we are now. I mean, there have been articles written about the Daily Beast started that off a couple of years ago, and there's been questions about this company and Congressman Collins for a while. So you're saying if he did use his influence committee-wise to get more drug approval, that kind of thing, that's where the conflict of interest laws come up?
Yes, and Congress a few years ago passed a special statute that makes it improper for congressmen to do that sort of thing.
Right, and just real quick on Congressman Collins, his defense so far has been that he didn't trade any stock. That was what the statement seemed to say, but as we've both said, there's still classic insider trading if true, right? Because he essentially tipped off his son who did the trading. That's the allegation.
Sure, it's the same thing as if he traded. He tipped somebody else who made or avoided a loss, and that would be a crime.
All right, Harvey Pitt, good to see you. Thank you for working through all these issues today. We appreciate it. Former SEC Chairman.